It was 1982 in Yuma, Arizona. My friend Rick and I were passing through Amarillo at sunset on the way to California from Chicago. On the second day, we were taking the 40 west over to the 8th south, then down to Yuma. It cuts through a great deal of empty land, inhospitable desert, but beautiful views. Though strangely, I felt nervous. Don't get me wrong, the sky was spectacular. The sunset a brilliant orange, red, pink across the wide open plain. But as the stars began to come out, all I could see was a solitary 2-lane highway going through the heart of nowhere. It was breathtaking, it was gorgeous, but something made me anxious about it. Maybe everyone gets anxious in desolation, I don't know. We were driving in the dark, unlighted, essentially abandoned Interstate 4. We had gas, we had food, but the wide open sky over the wide open desert made me feel so tiny. We were listening to tapes, so our music was good enough, but the driving was monotonous. We were trying to make it to Yuma and had left Phoenix about an hour and a half ago, traveling alongside Interstate 8, and then that was when I saw it. We had gotten lost, twisted around and on the highway, and apparently missed the off-ramp to Yuma. We wanted to stop there for gas and food and stretch our legs, so as I fiddled with the map, Rick pulled off the shoulder off the road, and the car suddenly fell on the passenger side. "Uh-oh," I said. "Shoot, I hope you didn't ground us into the desert sand." Rick then pulled the car forward, still along the shoulder, so we knew we were okay. I gave Rick the map and got out. It was night now, that deep purple clear desert kind of night. I could see the twinkling light of Yuma in the distance, or at least that is what I think it was. Then Rick got out of the car, opened a can of Coke and said, "We'll get there all right." He was confident though, I not so much. I felt more like we might spend all of our gas looking for an exit. Rick walked a ways from the car, and then I hear him taking a leak. I looked back away from the car, in the opposite direction of where the twinkling lights of Yuma were. I looked back over the desperate loneliness of Interstate 8. No other cars. And beyond that, the stoic outline of the rock formations of the Sonoran Desert stretching out beneath the full moon on a mystic desert night. As I turned to head back to the car, my eyes caught sight of something unbelievable. I stopped and looked back. There it was, sitting on a nearby rock formation. Near the top was a clear outline of the profile of a gargoyle, just like on a Gothic church, you know, like the ones you see on the old churches in Europe. It was beautiful, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, that someone would carve that intricate beauty into the rock, and at such a nondescript place. What a wonderful vision on a lonely highway in the deep desert in the middle of the night. I stood there nodding my head. I really loved that vision, until it spread its wings and flew up into the night. Everything immediately after that was a blur. I was screaming. I was running back to the car. I grabbed Rick, and Rick did not believe me. And then Rick saw it flying in circles under the moon and directly over the top of us. We got in the car, and Rick drove like a psychopath. Then we see something swoop just over the windshield. There was no mistaking the giant bat wings. "Did you see that?" I shouted. "I saw it," Rick answered. "It's a giant bat," I reassured him, and myself. "You think?" he reassured me, and I himself. "Yeah, that's what it was," I told him. Then something sideswiped us from the dark. The car went into a powerful slide and off into the sand. The car stopped. It turned off because it was still in gear. Rick started it up again, and the wheels were spinning. We got out to see what was going on. "Not too bad," I told Rick. "Okay, push, I'll drop it into gear." He quickly ordered, then jumped back into the car. We were rocking, then fortunately rolled back on the road. He idled the car in neutral and got the flashlight out of the glove box. Rick clicks it on and hands it to me. The car did not have air conditioning, so the windows were down. "Just keep it in hand if we see that thing again. Shine it," Rick told me. But before we can roll, a giant shadow drops down by the passenger window where I was sitting. My reflex was to immediately shine the flashlight I was holding at it. The flashlight fell on this yellow-eyed, leather-faced, boiling red, devil-horned gargoyle. "What the?" Rick shouted. All I did was scream, "Drive, drive, drive now!" We drove past Yuma, and we made it to Los Angeles. Something, to this day, still lives in that desert. The year is 1995, in Yuma, Arizona. I have seen some strange and disturbing things in my life. Some when I was serving in the military. Some when I was in the horrible neighborhood where I grew up. Some just because I was with a bad element somewhere. But the scariest thing I have ever seen was that night in the desert. A bunch of us had gone camping in the Arizona desert. It was a perfect night. We were loaded. We had a campfire. We were pumping the jams and just chilling out. I had been drinking like a fish and need to drain the water tanks. I got up and walked north behind a rock formation and leaned up against it and started taking a piss. Just as I am about to finish, I see a glow over the hill. Not a big bright glow, like a UFO or something, but just an almost indiscernible orange flicker. I was about to walk over to the hill and see what was going on when Lawrence stumbled over to take a piss. He started blathering about Wendy, which is one of our friends that he was into. "Oh man, bro, she is so hot. I think she's gonna hang with us the whole entire weekend, dude." He started. "That gives me time to work my magic." I did not respond to his junk. Instead, I pointed out the glow still going on over the hill. "What is that, man?" I asked him. "What?" he asked me. I told him that something was glowing over there. I remember he stopped, looked, swigged his beer, and finished pissing. And then he said, "Oh yeah, let's go have a look." I told him and we started over. As we were walking over, he mumbles, "Probably just campfire. We're not the only campers out here." I told him probably. And then he whispered, "But we walked about, an hour? I thought Diane said this was private." And I answered quietly, I don't know." Then he started rambling about Wendy. "Damn, how am I supposed to get up with my girl if we got other people rolling up on us like we are in the mall, yo?" Then we got to the top of the knoll and looked down. There was no campfire. There was, however, something that looked like a fire glowing from a hole in the rocks going down into the earth. "What the hell?" Lawrence asked. "I have no idea," I told him. "Is that a volcano or something?" he said. "I don't know. I guess it could be," I responded. "Should we go look?" he asked. "Yeah, if it gets too hot, ain't nothing but a thing," I reassured Lawrence. And as we started walking toward the glowing hole in the earth, Lawrence kept repeating "nothing but a thing" over and over. We started down the embankment and got maybe 30 feet from it when we started to see something coming out of it. "Maybe it's like Old Faithful, at Yellowstone," Lawrence started. "Every so often it's going to belch out some stuff," he finished. We both stood there, totally mesmerized. Something was coming up out of that hole. At first, it looked like 2 closed golf umbrellas were being pushed out of the hole. And then the umbrellas parted as they pushed farther from the constraints of the tunnel. Then we watched as these 2 horns, like upright ram horns, came out between the umbrellas that looked like they were opening up. Honestly, I think we thought it was some type of wildlife. Neither one of us said anything at first. We were just watching. I think we expected to see hooves in a cow body or something, maybe, Or some animals running away from a fire in a cave? I really don't know. I think when a person sees something that they do not make any sense, sometimes all they can do is watch until something clicks. And so we watched the head come out. A human face. This is followed by a long, reptile arms, claws, and fingers. It put its hands on the ground and pushed itself from the hole, and the umbrellas opened up. They were wings. Shredded bat wings. No thanks. We took off running. Neither one of us even turned around until we got back to the campfire. We were acting a fool. We were screaming and gasping. Lawrence picked up a rock and shouted, "Let's go!" The car was probably a 45-minute walk away, and at first nobody even got up when we showed. I picked up a nearby rock also and stood by Lawrence. We were both hyperventilating. "Go back to the car? I'm not walking all the way back now. That's bull," our friend Darren barked. The girls were confused and stopped drinking their beers long enough to stare at us, then start giggling. "What's going on, you two?" Wendy had asked. "It's the devil. We saw the devil," Lawrence had blurted while backing up. "What?" Darren skeptically said as he got to his feet. "What the hell are you jerk-offs shitting about this time?" Then we heard something crunching in the dark, back from where we just were. Everyone got quiet. "What's going on?" Darren asked. "We saw this thing coming out of a hole," I started. "It's the devil. It came out of a hole in the ground. Straight out of the fire, straight out of hell," Lawrence interrupted. "Probably just saw a freaking Gillum monster, you idiot," Darren whispered. "Let's go back to the car," Janine said, and then we hear another crunching sound. "Somebody out there, you better come out now," Darren shouted. "No, man, I'm telling you, you don't know, man," Lawrence pleaded. "That shit is the devil." We all stood there for a moment, just frozen like a group of mannequins in a department store display, waiting. That's when we heard the whooshing sound. Then the girls started gathering their stuff. Winnie picked up her jacket and the flashlight, and Janine grabbed the sleeping bag and the cooler. Then Darren began reaching for his pack when we were all shocked by this boulder dropping from out of the sky and smashing our campfire out. There were screams, gasps, and all that. Then the flashlights came on and Lawrence ran off into the dark, toward where he apparently thought the car was, while the ashes drifted to the ground. We could hear something swooping over us. The girls were navigating the flashlights around, trying to spot it. And then Janine's light fell on some red-black skin flash over the top of us. We took off running. We headed back toward the car. We eventually caught up to Lawrence. We were scared and gasping for air and treading sand. We started talking, which helped to calm us down. Darren tried to remain logical, which also helped, I think. He was telling us that it could be just some kind of big desert bat. Wendy said something about maybe it was protecting its babies or something. Then Darren started talking about animals being territorial. Then I saw Darren flinch. Something had hit him. I asked him if he was okay, and he told me, "Never mind, just keep going." Then something smacked Janine. She screamed and started brushing off her shoulders. We started jogging. Then I see something fall on Wendy in front of me, like sticks. She jumps and screams, and then Lawrence is screaming. Then I'm being pelted with something. The flashlight are being wheeled around, and then I hear, "Snakes!" Snakes were falling out of the night sky above us. I saw Darren pull back his leg and shine down the flashlight. I caught sight of this twisting pile of rattlers. I did not know if they were Mojave rattlers or sidewinders, and none of us stuck around to find out. We all just ran through the dark crying and waving our hands, jumping as we went. We finally get back to the car, and I was asking anyone if they were bit. Janine asked pathetically, "Is there a hospital nearby?" I had no idea if there was, but I knew if anyone had been bit by a Mojave and immediately ran for 15 minutes afterward, they would probably be dead in the next 10 minutes. But all I really knew was we had to get in the car and get the hell out of there. We stumbled down the slope together, where the cars was when we saw this thing, a big thing, drop from the sky on the other side of the car. We all stopped. The thing crawled up on top of the car and squatted there. It was a terrifying sight to behold. It opened its wings up and stood up. You could see its horns and wings. Lawrence started praying. He was calling to Jesus and asking for mercy. I remember I swallowed hard. The thing made a loud and long clicking sound and then flew off into the night sky. We made it to the car. No one had been bitten, thankfully, and I never drove through the desert ever again. The year was 1992, south of Tucson, Arizona. I like to explore the caves around Tucson. I would usually go alone because I did not like whiners and hated being rushed. It's an acquired taste, I guess. I could spend the whole weekend just hiking and caving. It was a Friday in the hot summer. I took my ATV out and dropped it near the caves, right around sunset. And what a sunset it was, a gigantic orange ball across the baked desert. Classic. I took out my camera and began taking pictures of the massive orange circle. That was when I saw it. At first I thought it was an illusion. You know, a trick of light. It happens in the desert because the heat like that, with the heat waves in the air, you get these ripples or dimples that look like this or that. I rubbed my eyes and looked away and looked back, but it was still there. I saw these tremendous wings, like California condor-sized wings. They were flapping in huge swaths. I thought it was strange because it did not seem to move like a vulture or a large bird. Something was different about it. Then, as it got closer to me, I could make out peaks on the wings, like a bat has, and I thought, no, that can't be. I considered maybe it was some kind of genetically mutated fruit bat. The sun was not dipping behind the horizon yet, so the sky was getting darker, but still it was too bright for me to be staring very long into the sun without getting phased out. I looked away, then looked back, and sure enough, this thing was still there and getting closer, bigger. I lifted the camera and just began snapping pictures. I was hoping, even with the sunlight or twilight combination, I can get something on film. The sun continued to fade, but the bat started hovering in place. Then, as the last of the sun began to fade and twilight began to take over, the bat began lowering straight down in place. That was when I saw a body, like a human-shaped body, drop as it hovered to the desert floor. I watched while the light faded on this thing as it set down on the ground about 100 yards away. It stood for a moment, then appeared to close its wings and dive into the sand. Literally into the sand. As the last of the sunlight disappeared, the bat thing disappeared into the desert floor like a mole. I thought perhaps there had been a crevice there obscured by sand. Maybe it went to one of the bat caves there? I considered getting an ATV and rolling over there to get a picture of a world record bat, but I could not really be sure what I saw and did not know what I might stumble into. I started back down the rocks when I heard a shriek like a cat coming from the caves underneath. The sound was a wailing which got louder as I slowly pioneered my way down. After about 10 steps, I hear this screeching sound coming from the crevice directly underneath me. I could not have been more than 15 feet away. I did not know what it was, but it did not sound happy. I only had a knife with me and did not know what I may stumble upon. So I decided to wait. Basically, I planned to hide in place and wait for this thing to pass, or reveal itself at some point. I heard this rattling, clicking sound draw a few feet away from me in the gap there. I was scared. I waited. After about 5 minutes, I heard nothing anymore, so the light fell on this breathtaking lizard face. It had yellow eyes and horns like a big horned sheep. It snorted at me and then leaned forward like a snake. I ran. Then all of a sudden, I am flying through the air, and I must have went up about 10 to 20 feet and was dropped on the ground. I got up and ran right into a heavy cactus combo. I knew I was bleeding when I jumped on the ATV and tore out of there, and as I drove away, I passed that thing. It was already in front of me, looking down from atop the cave opening. I remained there, squatted with its wings folded behind it as I drove me. The year is 1989, South Tucson, Arizona. We were professional cave spelunkers, or whatever you call it, but we wanted to trip the caves in October. We heard they were beautiful and wanted to get some pictures. We went in the late afternoon and were told by the locals to be out before sundown. He said it's not safe after dark. A lot of nocturnal animals come out. And lastly, he warned us that because the caves were natural and nothing was fenced or maintained, don't be surprised if you come upon a snake or two. So before we went in, I was already getting nervous. I thought it would be relaxing, but there we were getting all warned and just feeling wary about everything. My friends laughed and told me to ignore the guy. My friend Roger had told me, he is saying that to feel important, let's go. And that was the end of that. It was late afternoon when we went into the caves, but after only a few feet, it got dark as night. Occasionally, after a twist of turn, we could see more light coming in from outside, lighting the way in front of us. We went deeper, and it got colder. I would have had them hold the flashlights as I took some totally awesome pictures of the cave walls. It was beautiful. We got as far down as we dared when we came to a rugged opening. We shined our lights in and could see it drop down and curved around. I think we could squeeze through, Aaron started. You guys want to try it? He finished. We thought about it. It looks like no one has been through here in ages. Probably priceless photos. You guys up for it? He asked. Again, we thought about it. Maybe we should. But I think it's getting dark outside. Maybe animals are going to start roaming around in here, Tracy worried. We pulled our flashlights away and pointed back to the path up, and that was when I noticed the light coming from down below the rugged crevice. Before the guys could turn their lights back on, I told them, "Hold it, hold it!" We stood there and looked down at a crack. We saw an orange light flicker down there. "What is that?" I asked. "Oh, that must be the sunset. Must be another," Roger attempted to clarify. All four of us squeezed together and peered down in the hole. And no sooner had we done that than we saw an unmistakable shape of webbed wings. They must have been at least 10 feet across. Then they blurred and swooped in front of the light. And then the light faded. "What the hell was that?" Aaron said. We got out of there. We did not stop for pictures. We did not chat. We just headed for the opening. I know I was more scared with every step. I could just feel something following us in the cave. And then we could hear something running up behind us. At first, it started in the far distance, but you could hear it getting closer. I could hear Aaron's voice shaking when he just told us, "Just keep going." We made it out of the cave and ran to the car, and we all stood there looking back and breathing. The local guy was gone, and no one was around. "I think that guy is just having some fun with us," Roger concluded. And then Aaron pointed back to where we had come. "Do you see that? I see yellow eyes. You see that?" Aaron asked. I saw it. We all began getting in the car. It was then that Aaron pointed his light back up there. Aaron and I saw something like a red alligator skin roll back into the dark. Maybe the local guy was pranking us, but it was a very good and very scary prank. I personally think that was organic life too, to some extent. Something lives in those caves in the Sunran Desert in Arizona.